Hey everybody, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with the next video in our How to Play series for the Royal Navy cruiser line. This is the Tier 6 Leander class cruiser. The Leanders were all launched in the 1930s and served through World War II. Their design is based on the York-class heavy cruiser for the Royal Navy, not to be confused with the York-class cruiser for the German Navy. The design was supposed to be about 7,200 tons in terms of displacement. However, their final weights were actually between 9,000 and 10,000 tons. These ships are easily identified by a unique feature to this class of cruisers, that being the single funnel. This was due to the fact that the designers just took all of the propulsion machinery and placed them in one location in the ship. This was later determined to be quite a bit of a problem, as if the ship took an enemy round to the propulsion areas, it basically disabled the ship and left it drifting in the ocean. This was fixed in the modified Leander classes that came after the initial Leanders. These are most commonly known as the Perth class of cruiser, which Perth is actually in the game. The primary difference between those two ships, though, comes down to the location of the propulsion machinery spaces. The Perth class had them separated, which is why the Perth has two funnels and why the Leander only has one. In terms of service history, there's two of these ships that actually have quite an amazing service history, and they should come to those who are studiers of World War II naval battles. These names won't be a shock to you, that being the HMS Ajax and the HMS Achilles. Both of these ships participated in the Battle of River Plate, which is the battle that led to the scuttling of the Graf Spee, the Panzerschiff Graf Spee, the Commerce Raider Graf Spee. Ajax also participated in the Normandy beach landings by shelling Gold Beach. At the end of the war and after the war, when they started selling off and scrapping these ships, they began to realize that they actually were going to regret the selling of these ships or the scrapping of these ships. But by the time the Ajax was scrapped in 1949, it was already too late. What they had determined, though, was that the generous hull space on these ships, the long range, and the relatively quick speed made them ideal radar picket ships. But as I said, by the time they figured this out, it was too late. Ajax had already been scrapped, and that was the last remaining Leander at the time. Let's go to the in-game gameplay style. You know, this is the first Royal Navy cruiser where we get a standard, what I'm going to call modern gun configuration. And by that I mean we have the guns are located in turrets that have more than one barrel to them, and they're not interspersed in weird configurations. We finally get the dual gun turrets, 4 total, for a total of 8 guns. This configuration maximizes your ability to shoot at enemy targets while minimizing your profile, whereas if you remember in the Emerald, in order to bring all of your guns to bear, you basically were broadside to your enemy the whole time, which isn't a good tactic on these ships because they're so fragile. This class also has some of the most ridiculous acceleration I have ever seen of any ship in the game. It gets to 30 knots in 10 to 12 seconds. Yes, 10 to 12 seconds from 0 to 30 knots. That is unbelievable. That is probably faster than the fastest destroyers can accelerate. However, there is a bit of a downside to that. And like all the other Royal Navy cruisers that we've seen so far, they gain speed while at maximum rudder input. And that makes dodging torpedoes very difficult because the ships are actually picking up speed instead of bleeding off speed like we want them to. If you plan ahead, it's not a huge deal. Also, these ships have really bad low-speed maneuverability, which can be a bit of a problem if you're sitting in your smoke cloud and torpedoes come in and you need to duck in between torpedo waves. It's not a bad thing if you're angled correctly, or if the torpedoes are just behind you or just ahead of you, you can quickly accelerate away from them. That's handy, but in terms of low-speed maneuverability, they are lacking in that area. Of course, this is offset by the fact that, well, we have excellent guns for once. We no longer have those little pea shooters. I mean, they're still 6 inches, don't get me wrong, but these guns feel like they can properly do damage to ships. You'll frequently see 2K plus salvos against cruisers and battleships that are broadside to you. It finally feels like you're doing more than just being an annoyance to them. To add to that, we also get 8-kilometer torpedoes. Finally, we no longer have to be at point-blank range to use our torpedoes. The other upside to the Leander at Tier 6 is that we no longer have that Tier 5 matchmaking. That is such a pain in the neck where you're always fighting Tier 7s. With the Tier 6 matchmaking, you finally get the opportunity to see more top-tier games at Tier 6, meaning you're the highest tier ship in the game, than you see anything else. You no longer have to worry about getting drastically up-tiered all the time. Of course, you do still get up-tiered, and you can see up to Tier 8s on rare occasions. However, it's really not that bad in this ship. It actually has quite a lot of punch and capability, even when it's up-tiered, as we'll see in the match that I'm going to show you. Let's dive into the stats before we get to that battle, though. In terms of hit points, she has 28,700 hit points, 100 millimeters of armor at the thickest point, which is just over the machinery spaces. She does have 8 6-inch guns. They are located in 4 dual-barrel turrets. The main battery firing range is 13.2 kilometers, so those guns shoot out to 13.2 kilometers. She does have a set of secondary guns. There are 4 4-inch turrets with 2 barrels each on them. Those turrets will look familiar to anyone who's played Warspite, or if you can remember as far back as Black Swan. I mean, holy cow, Black Swan, that was forever ago. Those are the main guns on the Black Swan. And they do have a pretty impressive 6.3 kilometer secondary range at this tier already. She does have torpedoes, as we said. There are 8 total, 4 on each side. They have an 8-kilometer range, 61 knot speed, and a 1.3 kilometer detection range. She does have a noticeable anti-aircraft complement. It is respectable. It is not the best in its tier. That honor still goes to the Cleveland, believe it or not. However, the anti-aircraft is very respectable, and this will shoot down aircraft that get into its anti-aircraft circle. Maneuverability. Her top speed is 32.5 knots. Her turning circle is 640 meters with a rudder shift time of 6.3 seconds. That 6.3 seconds is with steering gears mod 2, the upgrade module. In terms of her concealment, she is spotted by other ships at 10 kilometers and spotted by aircraft at 6.7 kilometers. Let's dive into these upgrade modules. Main armaments mod 1. Yep, it's still a standard on every ship I play. Fancy that. Aiming systems mod 1 to reduce the dispersion of our main battery and increase how quickly our torpedo tubes come to bear. It also does some things with the secondaries, but that 5% increase in the firing range of them and reduction in dispersion is basically, it doesn't really play that big of a role. I've switched out damage control systems mod 1 for propulsion systems mod 1. This reduces the chances of our engines being incapacitated, and it decreases the time it takes to repair our engines should they get incapacitated. And in the final spot, we are taking steering gears mod 2, which reduces the rudder shift by 20%. The only other option we have is damage control systems mod 2, which reduces our flood time and fire times by 15%. You can see how this would not be useful on a ship where avoiding damage altogether is the better idea. That's why I stick with steering gears mod 2 on these ships. Even though we don't necessarily need more maneuverability, more doesn't hurt either. Also, you'll notice that the engine acceleration mod is not available for the Leander. Let's go ahead and let's dive on into that battle video. It's like 106,000 damage, 108,000 damage if I remember correctly. It's a lot of fun. There's only 2 torpedo hits, but 4 total sinks. Quite an impressive game, if I may say so myself. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Alright, so we got ourselves into a Tier 7 fight. This fight has no aircraft carriers in it, so I'm sure there's going to be someone down in the comments that goes, "Hey, there was no aircraft carrier in this match, so obviously these results are completely null and void. You didn't have somebody spotting it. Oh wait, this isn't a destroyer, it's a Royal Navy cruiser. We'll be okay. Their team happens to have a Nagato on it, and if I remember correctly, a Scharnhorst. Yes, those are their 2 Tier 7 battleships. There is a number of cruisers in this match, including 2 Belfast, 1 on each team, and a Cleveland, which comes into play, as well as a Leander that we get into a duel with about halfway through the match. This is quite a lot of fun. We're up and over 100,000 damage, which is a good place to be for this ship. This is a pretty impressive game, I do have to admit. Maybe I have to toot my horn just a little bit about that stuff, but, you know, ultimately, yeah, okay. It's impressive, but it's not like the end of the world. You can see here right off the top of the bat, we get accelerating, and it doesn't take us very long to get up to max speed. We hit 30 knots in just 12 seconds. 30 knots from a standstill to 12 seconds worth? Wow. This ship has a lot of really good acceleration, as you can see. It also bleeds speed relatively well, of course, not while turning. Also, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate here the gun angles. You can see here the gun angle required for you to get all 4 turrets to bear all 8 guns. It's a pretty reasonable angle. There are certainly better ships out there with far better firing angles, but this ain't one of them. This angle here is not too bad for incoming cruiser fire, especially of the 6-inch variety, but you get anything over 6 inches at that angle and it starts to get a little hairy as incoming fire starts to hurt bad. That said, you know, up against other Royal Navy cruisers, that angle seems to work out reasonably well. They're still going to do some damage to you, but in my experience, you tend to bounce more than you actually receive in that, which is exactly what you're looking for. Battleships? Yeah, no, you're definitely not going to want to present that much of a profile on these ships into a battleship. Basically, they will overpen every aspect of your ship and turn you into a submarine. And these ships aren't particularly good submarines with only 8 torpedoes. Well, I guess the real ones didn't really have that many more either. Alright, so we are headed up here to sea. This is one of my favorite locations to go to on Neighbors, which is the map we are in. We're going to hold our fire here for as long as possible until we get a good solid shot on this Cleveland. And there we go. We're basically going to get detected anyway as we were coming out of that. So we put rounds out. Well, only 1,000 damage to that Cleveland. Put shots out on that Belfast as well. Maybe we can get some hits on him. Unfortunately, we get a bounce, so no real damage. Putting that rudder shift to good use, though, you can see it certainly isn't lacking by any stretch of the imagination. Random stern hit. We are going to, punish that Mahan a little bit. Launching torpedoes into that smoke cloud, he's within range. We're going to go ahead and we're going to launch him. And pray that, maybe we get a lucky torpedo hit on him. I accidentally hit my hydro here. What I was looking for is my smoke, and I had to deploy it too fast. Unfortunately, their spotting plane is going to get me spotted here. And because I'm trying to get away without beaching myself, of course we end up taking extra damage. It really sucks. And I'm glad I didn't get fully beached there. Get started on fire. And at this point in the match, I'm really thinking this is going to be a lame duck match. You get into these situations in a game where you're like, I am just straight up potato right now and cannot get a good game to save my life. But ultimately, this game ends up being a very good game. One which I am quite proud of. Well over 100,000 damage. Well, maybe not well over, but it is over 100,000 damage, which is a good thing. Back to engaging our good old friend the Cleveland over here. We take off another 1,000 of his hit points and send him to the bottom. Our teammates do anyway. So now it's time to go cap C. For some odd reason, we are not capping C. So we need to push out whatever is currently in C. We have this Fiji up here, which is doing a fantastic job of preventing them from capping it. Unfortunately, nobody else has capped any other control points at this point. Ah, we see ourselves a juicy target. Broadside Royal Navy cruiser, sign me up. He is backing up, and that is one thing that's... It's not difficult to get citadels up against him, but, you know, he's angled just enough to prevent it from happening. And at that point, I thought he was going to go forward. You know, backing up in these cruisers, especially when you're being spotted by another cruiser's hydro or radar, or you're out of the smoke, is really quite painful, as that guy can attest to. Hey, we are up to just shy of 20,000 damage, though, after that. Things are starting to look up. We are almost to the server average with plenty of time to go and over half our hit points. And we are also capping C, which will be our only control point at this point. Now, I see this New York over there, and I know there is also a Nagato over there. And this is one of the hard things for people to do, is to slow down and take a look at their mini-map. With that New York being there and no other real cover between him and I, as well as that Nagato, going around the end of this mountain like this Belfast does is a surefire way to lose a lot of hit points. I'm not interested in losing that many hit points, honestly, so I will go ahead and beach myself to try and back out of this situation and get around this this west side of this island. And it also opens us up for an attack we have later on, which is just amazing. There goes the Belfast, losing half of his hit points, and that's what I was talking about. There's no cover where he was going between him and the other two battleships that are on the enemy team that are in range of him. And in going around that corner, he was forced to rely on his smoke. In order to use his smoke, though, he has to slow down, which puts him at a serious disadvantage. There, Belfast goes down to our farragut with a good torpedo strike. You know, we've got this Nagato over here. We've got the friendly farragut smoke, and the Nagato's not paying attention. I wanted to launch those torpedoes, but that enemy ship hole there kind of makes it a bad idea, as well as our teammate that's crossing. I have no idea which way he's going, and I don't want to friendly torp him. So that Königsberg is really one reason why we didn't launch our torps. I also don't know how long the smoke is going to last, so I'm popping my own smoke here to prolong my ability to stay here. If this Nagato keeps coming at me, he's going to eventually get within torpedo range, so that's to my advantage. The longer I can stay here, the better. And you can see we're taking off about 3K a salvo, but we need to help our farragut out by taking out their farragut. We'll go ahead and shoot at him instead. We miss with that first salvo, and we don't get in on the fight here. Unfortunately, I've lost my targets. You know, we can see that Nagato is ducking behind the island, and we aren't going to get any hits on them, so let's move on out of here. We've got this Leander that's coming at us that's been spotted, and he had 50-50 chance of the direction he's going. You know, if I would have paid attention to the map, I probably would have launched him to the other side, simply because there's just a battleship off to my right that he is broadside to that he is going to obviously not try and charge. Now, the downside to what I do here is that, unfortunately, I don't have the speed to get around this island quick enough to get shots off at him. And I want to, you know, this island is in the way, and you can see just how frustrating it is to be in this situation, especially since I just wasted that side's torpedoes on him. But thankfully, he turns. I don't know what our battleship is doing here. He turns, we're going to turn in, and we're going to continue to chase him and fight. You can see his guns are coming around. I'm sure he's got torpedoes on the way. Hey, we got a first Citadel hit. Got a second Citadel hit. You can start to see the damage start to add up against him here. He misses me. Entirely misses me, I might add. Torpedoes need to... Unfortunately, we have to open up our broadside a little bit, and we take a little bit more damage than I want to, but we finish him off with an additional 2 Citadels. Now we've got a little bit of time to breathe, kind of plan some things out. This Bayern here is charging B headlong. He's not paying attention to me. He's close enough that I can pop out and probably launch some torpedoes at and maybe get 1 or 2 hits on. We're going to wait a little bit and see what he does, and we're going to use this island as cover, kind of like a U.S. destroyer would, and just shoot over it where he can't see me and I don't need to use my smoke consumable, which I will need later on. As it gets closer, though, we're going to start an attack run, especially as those rear turrets come in. And I'm praying that he just keeps on charging straight towards sea, which would be absolutely foolish of him, and he doesn't. So we're going to hold our fire. We're going to wait until he gets just a touch closer, and then we are going to full-on charge this guy. His guns are pointed at us. That puts us in a little bit of a disadvantage, but we've got him spotted already, and so all we have to do is abuse our rudder. He starts his turn. He shoots, and, well, he bounced one shell. Now for the rear guns. You can see we got an overpen. Now it's my turn. I'm launching these torpedoes short simply because I have a feeling he's going to try and turn in. Unfortunately, he doesn't really try to turn in. In fact, he just keeps on sailing out, and we only get 2 torpedo hits. Well, once again, I panic scramble to try and get the smoke up and accidentally hit the hydro button. We did get the kill, but we are now on fire. 79,000 damage done at this point in time in this match. This is already a good, solid match. We've got 2 kills, got 2 torpedo hits, a bunch of citadels, almost 100 shell hits, and we're winning. You know, this is a match we're going to win. They've only got 4 ships left to our 7, and for the most part, we're all in pretty good, solid shape. Now my repair is up. I got 12 seconds left on a fire. I'm going to go ahead and burn that repair. I need every ounce of hit points I got, especially since my next heal isn't for another minute. And this Alba, he's not paying attention to us. He spotted, I was spotted briefly, but he ultimately does not spot me. And we're going to go ahead and put some rounds into him. And he gets destroyed here after this salvo lands. And there he goes. You know, it's interesting that, you know, the gunnery in this and the smoke play is really an awful lot like playing an oversized destroyer, but with AP only. If it's broadside to you, it is the target of interest. And you can see here we're shooting at the shores, and we're not having terribly good luck penetrating him because he was angled slightly, and I misjudged that angle. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue to use that smoke for as long as it's there. Once it's not, we need to get moving full speed ahead. Thankfully, that doesn't take terribly long in this ship. And a citadel and a kill. Only a 2,000 damage citadel, but whatever. And my method to madness here is that I wanted to bail out of that smoke with this island between myself and this New York and Scharnhorst. Getting in a fight with one of these cruisers with a battleship requires a lot of pre-planning of all of your attack runs. I absolutely do not want to go into one of these engagements without having planned your method of attack in advance. No hits there in the dispersion. You can see why I took the dispersion module instead of one of the other modules, like the AA module. It's not that the dispersion is awful, it's just, it's not good either. And, you know, we take off 2,500 hit points from him, but we got a much more juicy target than that Scharnhorst. We've got this lovely New York here, which is just sailing all broadside to us for a grand old time. And we are at 95,000 damage here in a Tier 6 cruiser. Now up to 96.6. You can see, and this line is just all about the broadsides. If a ship is broadside to you, by goodness, please shoot at it. That is really where all of your damage rolls are going to come from. When they start going bow on or stern on, you start to lose the effectiveness of the ships. Simply because your AP just doesn't have as much superstructure to pen. Unfortunately, he's the only target that I've got to shoot at now, so, well, we'll just keep shooting at him. And he's a very easy target to hit with the guns because he's so slow and relatively unmaneuverable relative to the rate of fire and the capabilities of the gun arcs. And so we'll just keep on plinking away. We're 103,000 damage at this point. And we are definitely getting the win here. Now we're up to 104,000. The damage rolls keep ticking up. I really do enjoy this ship, guys. Yeah, 105,000. I do enjoy the ship. It has a lot of really good strong suits to it. It's reasonably maneuverable. It accelerates stupid quick. It's relatively stealthy. This is really when the Royal Navy cruiser line starts to feel like a finished and polished line. And this is really where the joys of the line start to become apparent. The Fiji afterwards is another phenomenal ship. And, oh, we get the kill. Cool. Here's the end battle screens. You can see 106,891 damage, 4 kills, 2 cap assists, 2,023 base XP. Here is the detailed report. You can see only 23,000 damage was done by torpedoes, so everything else was done by guns. 258,000 credits, and that's that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, let me know down in the comments what you think of the new audio. Had a bit of a mic setup change, and I'm working on improving it. And as usual, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching.